Hi, I'm Stephen Collins. I played Jake Cutter in Tales of the Gold Monkey.
Hi, I'm Caitlin O'Haney and I played Sarah Stickney White on Tales of the Gold Monkey.
Hi, I'm Tom Green, and I was one of the writer-producers of Tales of the Gold Monkey.
My name is Harvey Laidman. I'm a director. I got involved in Tales of the Gold Monkey because Don Belisario was the producer, and he called me one day and he said, would you be interested in doing an action show? And I said, absolutely, I'll follow you anywhere, Don. And that's how I got involved in Tales of the Gold Monkey.
Don Belisario had written such... It was perfect. Seriously. The emotional arc of it, the relationships between the characters, it was so much fun.
Don Belisario was an amazing, creative guy. I don't think he agrees that he's a perfectionist, and it's because he's such a perfectionist. He could never, because he's so perfect, agree that he was perfect, but he was.
Don had a hard time selling this fabulous script until Raiders of the Lost Ark hit the screens.
Gold Monkey was often compared in shorthand to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh yeah, it's sort of like Raiders of the Lost Ark for television, people would say.
Raiders of the Lost Ark was something that had actually happened after Gold Monkey. And what I mean by that is that Don Belisario had actually pitched this idea based on his own passion for the kind of 1930s adventure movies and novels and so forth, and also a specific movie, Only Angels Have Wings, with a little bit of Treasure of Sierra Madre and maybe even Key Largo thrown in.
Don Belisario pitched Gold Monkey to the network about a year or two before Raiders came out, and they turned him down. And then when Raiders came out and did well, they came back to Don and said, you know what, that Gold Monkey thing, that's kind of a good idea, let's do that.
This is like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Don was going, no, it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's based on Only Angels Have Wings, the relationship-driven picture. And the studios kept going, no. We want this to be a Raiders of the Lost Ark ripoff. That's what we want. We want this to be a TV version of... Poor Don.
I had not seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was probably the only person on the planet who hadn't seen it when we started work on Gold Monkey, and I thought, I'm gonna still not see it. I think it's better that I don't see it, so I'm not in any conscious way trying to imitate it. Because the show wasn't a conscious imitation of it. It just had the similarity of the period and a kind of action-adventure, tough guy hero. Self-deprecating hero. In retrospect, I probably should have watched it because I probably could have learned a lot from watching Harrison Ford, but I didn't.
Ready? He hates takeoffs.
Jake Cutter was a man who, in 1938, flew an old amphibious plane called a Grumman Goose. He flew it for hire in a fictitious part of Southeast Asia called Bora Gora. And he was kind of trapped there by his own bad fortune and his lack of money. He didn't really have enough money to get himself out of that part of the world. He had a dog named Jack who had a glass eye that Jake had lost several times in a poker game. And so he needed to stay in that part of the world in hopes of getting the eye back, but mostly because he didn't have enough money to move.
What's the bet again?
The ruby ring and 20 Deutsche Marks to you.
And that's $50 American.
And so he was there in a very sort of exotic time and place in history. 1938, America wasn't yet in World War II, but all the other forces of the war were converging on that part of the world. And Jake was often hired to fly cargo for people he might not have particularly respected or cared about, but he had to do what he had to do. We used to call him Jake Cutter's Soldier of Fortune for short, and I still sign emails to the living members of the cast, JCSOF. Jake Cutter's Soldier of Fortune. Jake and I look astonishingly alike. Those are probably the only characteristics that we really have in common. We look and sound a lot alike.
Okay, we won't call it even.
I mean, I think it's funny for me to have been cast in a part like this. I mean, I never could have. I am so not a fighter, and Jake was one of these two-fisted, you know, old-fashioned all-American heroes.
You may think this silly, but ever since I can remember, I had this urge to be a knight. Well, not in armor or anything like that, just in spirit. You know, to help the helpless, to find the wrong and right it.
Jake's a whole lot tougher than I ever could be.
Then somewhere around 13 or 14, it sort of all became an urge to save beautiful damsels in distress. I just wish somewhere in all those books I read about knights and dragons, they'd have warned me about damsels wearing little straw hats.
Sarah just knew how to take care of herself. And I loved that about her. She just wasn't going to let anybody push her around. And she knew what she wanted, and she knew she was smart, and she had character.
Caitlin and I have, and I don't know where this comes from, but we always had great chemistry on screen. And I thought she was just adorable in every way. So there was really good chemistry.
Someone give me a hand.
You didn't dump that?
You think I'm going to be stuck in the middle of the South Pacific with only the clothes on my back, mister? You're crazy.
The weight of that suitcase could have made the difference between us staying in the air or going in the drink.
It could have, but it didn't.
She irritated me in the ways that Sarah irritates Jake, and she attracted me in the ways that Sarah attracts Jake, and that's just good luck.
She was a find of a century, and she was an actress of the century. Don wanted to do a character that literally ripped out of the pages of a 1930 adventure novel or movie. And if you look at Caitlin, who is like no other actress then or since, she literally seems to be that person. She has her Barbara Stanwyck and her other characters about her, and she's an incredible original, but her voice, her look, her feel is like no other actress that was there.
We shot the pilot in Hawaii, and that was a lot of fun.
What are you doing up so early?
I'm going with you.
No, you're not.
Well, Louis.
Pilot episode was shot mostly in Hawaii. Actually, I shouldn't even say mostly, about half in Hawaii. You can see the exteriors that are real.
There was a lot of stock footage that was used from the pilot, which was, by the way, shot in Hawaii. However, it was shot basically 100% on the Universal backlot. The thing that was amazing was, if you look at the show, it really does look like it was shot in some exotic location. At the time, it was the most expensive pilot ever made.
Don Belisario, who created and produced the show, had extraordinary sets built on a couple of sound stages here in LA at Universal.
The set itself became something that was absolutely the talk of Hollywood, and people came from all over. It was a massive jungle. It had ponds, it had lakes, and it had about a 3/4 story waterfall, which in the show itself turns out to be actually a rock formed like a monkey.
Amazing sound stages. I don't think anyone in the 21st century would go to this kind of expense to build a set.
The one set which people came from all over, not only Universal, but all over Hollywood, is built, and was built, I should say, on stage 12. And they built the jungle and so forth. People used to come around loving this show.
I mean, we had real waterfalls that actually worked, and we had real jungle, and we had a real Grumman goose playing in the back back lot of Universal on the lake where they used to shoot McHale's Navy. And that plane really motored along, and we used it for approach shots whenever the Goose was coming in to the dock outside the Monkey Bar or leaving.
And we shot all of the process of the Goose, the plane, on stage 26. It was so long that we could shoot the process scenes, the scenes with the projected sky from the Goose, Cutter's Goose.
We shot all the footage for the aerial scenes of Cutter's Goose. We shot that during the pilot, and they used it all throughout the series. Yeah, it was fun. It was wonderful. It was so cool.
Aside from the exteriors of the pilot, the entire rest of the show was shot on the back lot, and using some pretty extraordinary aerial photography that is still amazingly convincing to look at. You would swear that it was shot in the air for real, but it wasn't.
On the back lot of Universal, there was a rickety claptrap front set, a wooden set that we used for the Monkey Bar and Bora Gora. And every time we would shoot out in front of that, the tour trams would come by, and we would have to stop shooting because they would cross the Red Sea directly adjacent to where we were. So we would shoot for a little bit, and then the Red Sea would part, and then we would shoot again. The Monkey Bar set is probably still standing on the back lot of Universal because it costs money to tear down a set, but that money is better spent building new ones. So usually sets get very old. They're made out of telephone poles. So if you walked around the back of the Monkey Bar on the back lot of Universal, you would be meeting a bunch of telephone poles.
I guess to shoot the 22 hours of Tales of the Gold Monkey took about 9 or 10 months. The initial episodes all went terrifically over schedule. It was a big, unwieldy, hard-to-shoot show, a big action-adventure show with fights and all these flying sequences and things that are very time-intensive.
The shows themselves took more time than most of them, again, because they were a little bit more complicated, and Don also wanted it to look good. And so they were about sometimes as long as 8 or 9 days on shows that in those days we used to do in about 6. However, we also were able to do some shows, like the one I did called Force of Habit and some others, in as little as 3 to 4 days.
The first time we finished one on schedule was when a then fairly young director named Harvey Laidman came in.
I did 2 episodes of Tales of the Gold Monkey. I did the late Sarah White, and I did Force of Habit. So I only did 2 of the episodes. I directed them.
Harvey came in, and he knew how, he really understood how to shoot the kind of action sequences we had in the show in an efficient way. And lo and behold, we finished on schedule. So Harvey was brought back several times. And he was like a god to us because everyone was so tired and so cranky from working overtime and working too many hours and working long hours and too many days. So Harvey was kind of seen as the Messiah when he came in and finally wrangled the show into schedule. I remember after the first few weeks, I was losing weight like crazy and kind of in shock, but then this mentality sunk in on the set, which was that we were in this thing together. And the crew and the cast really fell in love with the show and with each other.
From the moment in Hawaii that Stephen and Jeffrey and I began to work together, we never stopped laughing. Jeff is a complete cut-up. I know he's up there, cracking everybody up.
Jeff made me laugh from day one. He was, I thought, the absolute perfect choice to play Corky.
Jeff was professional. Jeff was, he knew his character. He always knew his lines. He was a complete pro.
Jeff McKay, I can't believe he's gone. He was just a perfect sidekick in every sense and great company throughout that year. I got this harebrained idea that since we were spending all this time, we should learn the great Abbott and Costello routine, Who's on First. So we did, over a period of about a month, learn Who's on First. He playing the Costello part and me playing the Abbott part. And we got so we could do it for anybody on request. And we we performed it at the cast party at the end of the year. And Jeff said, "Come on, let's do Who's on First." And I could tell he was drunk. I mean, he was loaded. And Jeff could really put it away. But I said, "Jeff, yeah, this is such a good idea." He said, come on, let's go do it. And so we did, and you know what? He didn't miss a beat, and the thing went over like gangbusters. But he was just a great, great friend, and remained a friend up until his death. The business was not particularly kind to him in his last years, and he moved away from LA back to his home in Oklahoma. And I still, because he went off to Oklahoma and I wasn't seeing him as much, there's part of me that sort of thinks he's still there. But he's not. I miss him. The great actor Ron Moody played Louis in the pilot, and for reasons that were never fully explained to me, the network and/or Don Belisario, the producer, decided to replace Ron.
I've heard many stories about what happened with Ron Moody as Beauchamp's Louis. I don't have the definitive answer, but I've heard things third person a lot. And I think the bottom line is what we like to say, personality conflicts. And I think a lot of that had to do with possibly how easy or hard he was to work with, and how much Don Belisario thought that he would want to have him involved in a series, doing more than one episode. There were supposedly problems in that area.
Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?
We had Ron Moody, and he was wonderful too, and I actually was disappointed when they said that he wasn't going to go along with the series.
Enchanté.
And God knows he was disappointed too.
I was sad at the time because I thought he was so terrific, but it opened the door for my dear friend Roddy McDowall to come in and play Louis.
Why aren't you watching the film?
Oh, I read the book. I know how it ends.
I've seen this one, you know, in a small back room of the Jourdain. It's a rather interesting interpretation. It's amazing what we French do to Louis Carroll.
Louis.
I went to bat for Roddy to do the role. I'd worked with him in a miniseries called The Rhineman Exchange a few years before, and we'd become really good friends. And he got the show. He just got it, and he had this image of himself as Louis, and I loved working with Roddy. I mean, every day Roddy's on the set was just the stories and his expertise. One day we were shooting a scene in the Monkey Bar, and there was a scene with about 6 of us in it, including Roddy and me, and Jeff McKay. And we'd rehearsed the scene, and I think shot the master, and it was all kind of going along pretty well. But as the close-ups were being done, the scene was dying. It was losing its life. And the director said to all of us, "You guys, you got to pick up the cues. Keep it going. Come on, keep it going. Keep it going. It's running out of gas." And Roddy came up to me and he said, "You keep doing just what you're doing." He said, "The problem is you're very appropriately underplaying this scene. And what happens," he said, "when the star of a scene takes a certain tone as an actor, the other actors in the scene tend to unconsciously go to that tone. If it's very energetic, they'll all get energetic. If it's very underplayed, they'll all start underplaying. And that's what's happening." He said, "It's not your job to fix it. It's his job to keep the other actors as high energy as they were when we started doing the scene and we first shot the master." And boy, that was a complete revelation to me. It taught me something that I I've whispered that in the ear of many, many directors, some of them grateful to hear it, some of them very annoyed over the years. Roddy's just a complete joy to work with.
Gushy, my pistols, under the bar.
There's a character on Gold Monkey called Gushy who was, he was Louis' sort of right-hand guy. He did everything for Louis. Don Belisario, bless his heart, cast an actor named Les Janke, who has no legs.
Now wait, get the key. Wait a minute, he's not gonna hurt anybody. Just hold on, don't shoot.
I think it was one of the first times that a disabled person with that level of disability was given a really good running role on a show, and Les loved doing the show, and we loved him. I don't think it was ever explained how Gushy's character had lost his legs, but it was just this wonderful atmospheric thing that he was there running around doing errands, and Louis was not particularly nice to him most of the time, which was also interesting. Jack the dog.
They wanted a trained Jack Russell Terrier, obviously, to play Jack, right? With the patch and the whole thing, right. They found one in Australia. So Don Belisario was willing to pay the money to ship this dog from Australia in time for the pilot. At the airport, as they were getting out of the car to go aboard the plane, boom, the dog is killed by another car. Suddenly, we're doing the pilot, we have no Jack. They literally ran to the animal pound in the valley of Los Angeles, and they found Leo.
I remember Don Belisario, the producer, saying, there's going to be a dog in this show, and you're going to work with him a lot. And, you know, and the dogs can be a real pain in the butt, but this is a great dog. And when we shot the pilot, Leo was impossible. He didn't do anything right. It was endless.
I asked you if you wanted to bet your eye, didn't I? What do you mean, no? I showed you my hand. I said, what do you say? You said, ruff, right? Jack, what are you trying to pull?
God, if this thing makes it and the pilot is picked up, I'm going to be in hell every day we have to shoot with this dog. And I'm always with him. He's always with Jake. Jake and Jack, they're always together. And it was picked up, and we went into the first episode a couple months later with a real trainer, and he was a different animal.
Bless you. I suppose this prime length of old rope offends your refined nose. You used to like me to blow a little puff in your face every now and then.
He was...
Yes, you did.
He was perfect.
Especially those little green ones I used to get in Manila.
He never missed a beat, barked on cue, hit his marks, and was as good an acting partner as you could ever hope for.
I would direct Jack in a very specific way. I would tell him exactly what to do. I would say, Jack, now you go and look under the tent, and then you come out, and you're confused. Where are they? What's going on? And then you go over behind a palm tree, and you peek out from one side. Then you go over here, and you look, and we'll hold on a close-up of you. And Jack would do exactly that. Now, while I was telling Jack these directions, I was looking around for the Dennis, the trainer, and I didn't know where he was, and I realized he was standing behind me. So I did the whole thing again, and I go, Dennis, you know, just to see if Dennis was giving Jack directions behind me. But Dennis would always end up like this. Every time I'd look behind me. So I could never catch him at that.
I imagine Leo has gone off to doggy heaven by now, since that was almost 27 years ago. I don't think he's probably still with us, because I think he was 10 or 11 at the time. Great dog.
One thing that I did do was be responsible for Steve Collins meeting Faye Grant, falling in love.
There was an episode about 3/4 of the way through the season in which the audience is introduced to Louis' illegitimate daughter.
Papa! Please, this is madness!
The daughter was played by this beautiful young woman named Faye Grant.
Faye is so wonderful. I mean, my God. Gorgeous, talented, intelligent, I mean, funny. And so is Stephen, and they're perfect.
It was really, truly love at first sight. I mean, I was just completely knocked out by her.
I'm not the only one who cannot speak Venezuela.
And she's just, I don't know, never seen anything like it.
I got to be privy to them falling in love.
This is not the way it works in the cinema.
No. No, it isn't. Never is.
The very first day they met, I mean the chemistry between Faye and Stephen.
You think of me still as a little girl?
I mean, it was just unbelievable.
And the cameraman, Bill Battersby, who was a great camera operator, was telling me the last few days that Faye worked on the episode. He said to me, "Captain America, I see something going on through the lens with you and that," he said that, "you and that little blonde unit." That was his term for Faye. He referred to as a high-tech, state-of-the-art unit. And he was on to our attraction for each other, you know, in some ways almost more than we were at first, because I guess some of it was playing out through the lens.
And I could tell that Stephen was like a little nervous, and yet he was so attracted, and they had their parts to play, and Faye was like, you know, she was like, oh my God, he's so fabulous. And I was like, I know.
And next year's our 25th anniversary. We've been together ever since that time. I almost got killed twice in the making of the pilot. One was when there's a scene when the actor John Hillerman and I were having a fight. He was playing a Nazi character in the pilot. And we're near a waterfall, and we tumble over the waterfall and into the water. That was actually us in the shot, not stunt doubles. And somebody told me right before we did the shot, "Oh, by the way, John can't swim." We fell into the water. We went down considerably under the water. And John had a sort of panic attack, and he held on to me and tried to push me down to get himself up and out of the water. I just worked really, really hard to get John to let go of me. This is all underwater, and then we both popped up. And somebody went in and fished John out of the water. And I remember thinking, you know, a few more seconds down there of him holding me down, which he wasn't trying to do, he was just trying to get his head out of the water. And I would have been a goner. There's also a sequence in the pilot at the very end when we're madly trying to get off the island as it's all going to blow up. And the Goose is revved up, and Corky, my co-pilot is, and partner is behind the wheel trying to take off. And I'm tearing off down the beach and into the water, about up to like waist high in the water, and I grab onto the side of the Goose, and as he takes off, it was revving and starting, its engines were turning, it pulled away at immediately a pretty good speed. And I was holding on to it, to the side hatch, and my body was quickly sort of being pulled under the plane. I knew there were a lot of rudders and things under there. And at the same time, they weren't cutting the engines. The plane was actually moving faster and faster. That holding on is very, very real. I was literally holding on for dear life. Somebody finally yelled at the pilot enough to get him to cut the engines. And it was very scary. I thought he might actually take off, and that would have been a genuine Jake Cutter moment.
As the show progressed, and as with any shows, began to improve, our audience started to get bigger and bigger. Unfortunately, just at the time when the show, I think, was really starting to find its way and the audience, of course, the show got canceled.
In America, at that time, the series was very popular. Yeah. It was quite an interesting experience as a stage actress to be on a hit TV series.
The year that we were on, when we finished shooting, I was sent to Australia, where the show was apparently a huge hit. to help promote the show there. And it was while I was on that trip to Australia that we got news that the show had been canceled in the States. And it was so weird because everywhere I went in Australia, I was being greeted like a TV star.
The question that a lot of people ask is, if this was such a popular show, the networks really, other networks, ironically, loved the show and were saying at the end of the season, what are we going to do to counter-program against this when it comes back another season? And interesting what I just said when they said when it comes back. Everyone assumed the show was going to come back. Why didn't?
Really, the main reasons were politics. Personal politics between people involved with the show and people at ABC, which aired Tales of the Gold Monkey in the States.
There were certain conflicts with Don and the network, and Don was right. I mean, Don was fighting to make it the best show he could, and the network, I think, really wanted to do much more, mud people and silly, gorillas running around and making it much more of a kind of a comic book.
I don't believe it.
I do.
Where Don, if you notice, as the shows go on and we go into later episodes, the shows become much more mature, much more character-driven, and I think there were some conflicts.
Don Belisario turned ABC and Universal down. They came to him and they offered us a second season, but Don said, I don't want to do an action adventure. I'm so sick of arguing every week with you guys about the concept of the show. And, because every week we're crashing and burning or being eaten by cannibals, or when did I get to be a spy?
And I think in those days, since there were only 3 networks, the network almost had the power to take a show that had this kind of potential and was building an audience and almost out of spite let it die. Because in those days, when you only have 3 networks, they felt, well, we'll find something else to replace it.
There was one free hour up for grabs on the ABC schedule, and it might be Tales of the Gold Monkey, or Tales of the Gold Monkey would be canceled. And a producer of another show came to ABC and said, we'll work with you, we'll do anything, we love you, we think you're brilliant, work with me and I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I don't think that was exactly Don Belisario's attitude. In terms of working with ABC. He could be adversarial, and he had his own ideas about how the show should work, and I think he was right about those. And they just politically couldn't work those 2 things out. And so when, my understanding is when at the exact 11th hour, when the decision had to be made at the last minute, they said, we're going to work with the guy who we think wants to work with us more. About 2 years later, I had a meeting with Brandon Tartikoff, who was the great American TV executive, probably one of the smartest people to ever be a network programmer. He ran NBC for many years. And Brandon was talking to me about a possible new series about 2 years after Gold Monkey went off the air, and he said to me, when Tales of Gold Monkey was canceled, we threw a party here. All of our research showed us, and he said, plus I watched the show, and I thought, this is a 7-year show. This show's going to be on for as long as they want to be on. It has all the ingredients necessary for a long-run hit. And he said, and our research backed that up. And he said, interestingly, ABC, the network we were actually on, didn't subscribe to the same research that NBC subscribed to. So they weren't reading. ABC, our network, wasn't reading all this great research that Brandon was reading.
There was a huge uproar, which says something about the audience. Universal had more phone calls at the time on the cancellation of this show than almost any show they'd ever had before, which was kind of, you always want to say, isn't that nice to hear, but you'd rather like to see the show continue.
Gold Monkey is something that people really, really loved and were sad and flabbergasted as we were when it was canceled.
The show, to me, became really popular much later when a lot of people began to email and things showed up on the internet, fan groups. Patricia Anino and her group, Tales of the Golden Monkey fan group, began to contact people who worked on the show to tell them that the show was becoming very popular. It had a great cult following. I went to a wonderful celebration in Los Angeles and then again in Oklahoma City. And we were besieged by people who loved the show.
Occasionally I still get a piece of fan mail about Gold Monkey. I hear things online. I have a website, and people still do write about it from time to time, mostly asking, when's the DVD going to come out? To those of you who've been waiting for this DVD for a long time, I am one of you. I am so happy that you and I get to see and do this, and that Tales of the Gold Monkey gets to live on in brilliant, high-definition video forever. You know, the show, when it ended, we didn't have a chance to end it. When we finished shooting, we thought we'd probably be back for another season, and it was canceled. And so we never had a chance to end it. So, you know, it goes on in my life. In my mind, they're all still there in Bora Gora. And so I'm looking forward to getting a chance to checking them out again after all these years.